As anybody in this state could tell you, California is living through some of its driest years in a century. Right now, almost 99% of California is drier than normal. California is our biggest economy. California is our biggest agricultural producer. So what happens here matters to every working American, right down to the cost of food that you put on your table.
Since records began to be kept in the late 19th century, this is the third driest single year that we've had.
The Golden State is in the middle of an exceptional drought, the highest category a drought can get. It's the worst drought since record keeping began over 100 years ago, and water is in short supply.
We showed that for 2014, we were in fact 11 trillion gallons below normal conditions.
The state's main reservoirs are at an average of only 40% capacity.
This was Folsom Reservoir in 2011. And this is what the reservoir looked like after 3 years of drought. This was Lake Oroville in 2011. And this is what the lake looks like last year. And this is what the snowpack looks like in 2013. And this is what it looks like just a year later.
We are coming to you from Lake Piru. We're at the bottom of a reservoir. We should be 30 feet underwater here. Instead, these are the conditions. This is why California is in a state of emergency.
NASA says this epic drought now affects 64 million Americans across the West. Scientists call what's happening here unprecedented.
These kind of events are more likely to happen thanks to climate change. Some estimates say we could face the worst drought in a millennia if things stay the same.
Current drought in California is responsible for at least 410,000 acres of stagnant farmland. Last year alone saw more than $800 million of lost profits due to the state's lack of water.
Access to this water varies by location and seniority of water rights. For years, farmers near Porterville in the Central Valley relied on surface water to irrigate, but surface water has dried up. Farmers can't just sit back and wait for rain. They need water now.
State officials say the Sierra snowpack is near record lows, and any late season rainfall won't have much of an impact. In the Central Valley, farmers are watching their crops wither, and ranchers are selling off cattle to pay for hay to feed their remaining cows.
We're not getting any of that water this year, nor did we get any last year. I mean, we're trying to cut back as much as we can, but being a dairy farmer, my cows need to drink too. Well, when you get no surface water, your only option is to drill.
Farmers who are able to are drilling wells, pumping water from reservoirs deep underground to save their crops. But the water levels in those reservoirs, known as aquifers, is dropping. And in some areas, the ground is sinking as a result.
And groundwater isn't a reliable option. In a normal year, 40% of the state's drinking water comes from such underground sources. But for too long, it's been pumping out more water than can be put back in.
California does not, for the most part, regulate groundwater use. If you can drill a well, you can pump as much water as you want. That has the potential to screw your neighbor. And at the moment, in the wild west of groundwater drilling, people don't care. That may be okay for you in the short run, but it's a social and an economic problem in the long run.
In California, water is considered a property right. So farmers are free to drill as much as they want, as long as it's on their own property. All they need is a permit. But no one knows how much water farmers are pulling from the underground aquifer. That's the natural reservoir accumulated over thousands of years from rain and snow.
As the drought drags on, inequality will continue to increase. But there's another big problem. There's no way to tell how much groundwater is left.
We use more water than we have available to us on a renewable basis each year. And because of that, we are dipping into our groundwater. It's disappearing. And so the big implication is that we need to come up with a plan to slow the flow of groundwater use so that we can sustain it for the very long term.
We've pretended for 100 years that our surface water systems, our rivers and streams, aren't connected to our groundwater, and that when there wasn't enough surface water, we could pump groundwater to make it up. And that got us through some extreme events, some past droughts. But today, the overpumping of groundwater is a disaster in the making.
Groundwater sources have been rapidly running dry in California for over a decade. The big question is, how much longer will they last? But that's not just the question for California. Researchers from the University of California, Irvine released a new study that shows that over a third of the world's largest aquifers are rapidly running dry.
Business is booming right now. We have 7 drill rigs, and all 7 of them are booked up for at least a year. We're having to replace a lot of wells that weren't originally deep enough. Years ago, 800 foot was a deep well. 1,000 foot, 1,200 foot, that's normal conversation to a farmer. A well like this one right here is going to be right around $350,000 to $400,000. They don't have any other options. Spend the money and drill a well or go out of business.
We bought a ranch in Terabella with the hopes of planting grapes. The trees had died because of the lack of water. As farmers, we want to grow and we want to have bigger production, and we aren't able to.
I got to sell more cattle so I can buy more hay.
So the herd gets smaller and smaller.
And I'm getting poorer and poorer.
According to a study by the University of California, Davis, the drought has already rung up $2.7 billion in damages due to lost crops, livestock losses, and increased payments for pumping groundwater. The study goes on to show an estimated 565,000 acres of farmland will be fallowed due to the drought.
The University of California has done a study on this drought this year, and they're estimating that 17,000 farm worker jobs are going to be lost.
Ya no es California que era antes, supuestamente. Mis padres contaban mucho de que era precioso, era un fruterío enorme. Ahorita no, ya no. Ya el trabajo ha decaído demasiado. Pero aquí estamos, echándole ganas. Las plantas no salen, no dan la producción que requieren.
There's gonna be some that are just gonna say, forget it, sell the animals and get out. If we're not gonna get any surface water in this area, our groundwater will probably be depleted with the next 5 years. And when that happens, we're all done.
We're gonna have wars over water one of these days because water is vital.
The president said at the end of his speech that he was going to try to dedicate $1 billion to climate change. That's great, but climate change is very slow. We may never even see the results of that. It's certainly not going to help us in droughts in my lifetime. I'm not saying that the government's wrong in trying to do something about climate change, but in the meantime, we have to do something about now.
We're in an historic drought, and that demands unprecedented action. It's for that reason that I'm issuing an executive order mandating substantial water reduction across our state.
I really don't know. These are shot in the dark, but 200 gallons.
45 gallons.
Probably closer to 100 gallons.
100 gallons.
10 gallons.
1,000 gallons.
I'd be lucky to use a gallon, I think.
The average American uses about 100 gallons of this water each day.
Sometimes it seems she's all alone in this drought. People not aware of how serious things are. We can't waste another minute wasting water. It's time to conserve even more.
New faucet aerators in your bathroom and kitchen can save about 2,500 gallons of water every year.
Turning off the faucet when you brush your teeth can save up to 4 gallons of water.
You can also take shorter showers. And don't forget to check for leaks. Leaky toilets account for more than 95% of all household water waste.
To check your toilet for leaks, add food coloring or a leak detection tablet to the toilet tank. Wait 2 minutes, and if the color seeps from the tank into the bowl, you have a leak. Replacing a 2.5 gallon per minute shower head with a 2 gallon per minute shower head can save over 5,000 gallons annually for a family of 4. About 30% of water consumption in the typical home goes down the toilet. Toilets installed before 1992 commonly use 3.5 gallons or more per flush. Newer models offer the same flushing power but use much less water.
Forget about having a grass lawn. If we ditched the grass and moved to native landscaping, which we all know is beautiful, we would save a lot of water. Over 50% of home water use is for watering the grass. So huge savings right there.
A whopping 80% of California's water usage goes toward agriculture. 80! And there's a reason behind that. California is the country's most productive agricultural state by a huge margin.
It produces 70% of America's greens, and some crops like almonds, artichokes, olives, pistachios, pomegranates, raisins, and walnuts aren't grown anywhere else in the U.S.
Between livestock, fruit, nuts, vegetables, and eggs, it's a $50 billion a year industry. To help you visualize all of this, imagine each one of these plastic cups is a full gallon of water. It takes 62 gallons to make 8 ounces of okra. Asparagus is even worse, coming in at 163 gallons. Raspberries coming in at 34 gallons, and nectarines coming in at 38 gallons per 8 ounces. At nearly double that, we have avocados at 72 gallons. Cherries come in at a whopping 98 gallons per 8 ounces. Brussels sprouts, 19.5 gallons. Potatoes, 23.8 gallons. Huevos, 93.8 gallons. Spaghetti, 132.8 gallons. Chicken, good. 132.9 gallons. Tofu, 151 gallons. Cheddar, 180.2 gallons. Almonds, 184 gallons. Bacon, 330 gallons. Lentils, 570 gallons. Garbanzo beans, 609 gallons. Boof, 850.2 gallons. Well, we invited registered dietitian nutritionist Jessica Guterman to come in here and put together a few meals for us. They're high in protein, solid on calories and fiber, and are rich in vitamins and minerals. The difference? Oh, only 650 gallons of water. Plate A uses a whopping 813 gallons of water. Plate B is at least as good nutritionally speaking, but it only requires 163 gallons to make. In other words, you could make Plate B for 5 different people before you equal the water consumption of just one Plate A. But lastly, what about almonds? Major news outlets have been slandering them and they've become a very public villain. But as Gizmodo's Alyssa Walker points out, it's really not so much. We're talking about 184 gallons per 8 ounces, which is just above asparagus, but it's still a fraction of what beef, pork, and chickpeas use. You have to look at what you get for that water expenditure. For starters, you get a high protein, high calorie food. So nutritionally, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. But you're getting a lot of buck for your buck too. Last year alone, almonds brought in $11 billion of revenue to the state of California. So if you want a villain to blame, who's a better target? Surprise, the Kaiser Soze of California agriculture is alfalfa. But it's not because of the sprouts on your salad. We use more water growing alfalfa than we do any other single agricultural product. We're talking 15% or more. Compare that to 10% for almonds. But unlike our little nut buddies, alfalfa isn't used to feed humans. It's used to feed cows. And not even American cows. What the hell is going on here? California uses over 1 million acres to grow alfalfa, yet only a small fraction of that goes to feeding California's cows. The vast majority of it is shipped overseas, largely used to pay down our national trade debt to China. In 2011, the Port of Los Angeles alone shipped 2.4 million metric tons of animal feed, the majority of which was alfalfa grown in California. This is the equivalent of shipping off 2.4 billion gallons of water in the middle of an incredibly severe drought. That's completely insane.
The state of California is resorting to drastic measures tonight to combat its severe drought. The governor ordering the strictest crackdown on water use in the state's history. That means big sacrifices for tens of millions of people.
This year, we're taking $3 billion off the table, putting it into debt repayment and putting it into the reserve.
On top of that, K-12 education will get nearly $45 billion, which is an increase from January's plan, and $142 million will go towards addressing the state's drought.
You may have heard of California's high-speed rail, the $68 billion project that's supposed to bring the state's transportation system into the 21st century.
California hopes to connect San Francisco and Los Angeles with America's first true high-speed rail. 520 miles between them. Travel time, 3 hours.
The project, which is the brainchild of Governor Jerry Brown, has gotten plenty of criticism from both the left and the right for being a waste of time and money.
The real issue in California is not getting from San Francisco to LA. The roads work fine. It's only when you get into the area, there are lots of flights. So you're really just essentially replacing Southwest with a much more expensive, slower system that costs lots of public money.
With so many questioning the wisdom of spending billions on a rail system instead of funding other urgent state needs, why does the leadership in Sacramento insist on moving forward?
What this is all about is investing in the future. I know there are some fearful men, I call them declinists, who want to put their head in the hole and hope reality changes. You have to take the bull by the horns and start spending and investing in things that make sense. The drought means that nature is real. The natural systems now are not supplying our water. We're going to have to adapt, and each year we'll take a look at it and act prudently. We'll invest in new technology. We're going to have to be very inventive, but if it continues, it is going to hurt the production of food and fiber from California. It'll affect people not just in California, not just in the United States, but even in the world.
Thursday, you filed the papers to run for another term as governor. Why do you want another 4 years? What do you want to accomplish?
I see great opportunities, even still, in building a high-speed rail and taking care of our water needs. We're in an historic drought, and that demands unprecedented action.
The drought is a real problem, a hydrological challenge. We're going to meet it the best way we can.
We are in an unprecedented, very serious situation, and people should pause and reflect on how dependent we are on the rain, on nature, and one another. And I'm calling for a collaborative effort to restrain our water use. Well, this is about the worst drought, no question. So this is a serious human challenge and an economic challenge for our farmers and for a number of small communities.
Half of the produce in all of America comes from California. What does the drought mean to the country?
I don't see it that way. This is a time to invest, to create thousands of jobs like this project. We had the Golden Gate Bridge in the middle of the Depression. So it isn't, when things aren't going so good, it's not a time to kind of hunker down and hope that it all blows over.
Y pues realmente no es culpa ni de ellos ni nadie, sino que simplemente es culpa de todos. Que nos ayudemos unos a los otros, que hay que dejar el egoísmo a un lado. Bendito sea Dios que llueva todo lo que Él quiera. ¿Por qué? Porque el campo lo requiere y toda la humanidad lo requiere.
We must find alternative solutions to the water crisis.
So where are we going to get more fresh water from?
Los Angeles County is offering to buy water from Sacramento Valley farmers. The state is urging people to conserve water and was threatening to fine people during the Ice Bucket Challenge craze.
Well, some people think the ocean could save us.
Many people are looking to desalination as a potential solution to our water crisis.
Well, actually, San Diego County had the same idea. They're currently building the biggest desalination plant in the Western Hemisphere to the tune of $1 billion. When it's finished next year, it will make 204 million liters of potable water daily and sell at $1 for every 616 liters. Wow, we're in the clear, right? No. And it'll use a lot of energy because it's forcing pressurized water through a membrane to separate the water from the salt.
And the environmental issue is the extra salt that comes out of the water. What happens to it when you put it back in the ocean? Is that right?
That's one big factor, yes. There's a lot of leftover salt that if you're not careful, if it's just dumped back in all at once, it's much denser than seawater, and so it just sinks, and it can hurt sea life on the bottom wherever it's dumped.
But as a practical way to solve California's water woes, it's more of a small puzzle piece than the ultimate solution.
Desal is a part of the portfolio, and this administration has a water action plan, which is an all of the above strategy versus arguing over one or the other. We're not going to just conserve our way to the future. We're not going to just store our way to the future. We have to augment supply through recycling and stormwater capture. Desal has a place in that portfolio, so it'll play a role, but it does have some environmental consequences, energy consumption, and it's more expensive, so it's a tool to be used in the appropriate.
The desalination of seawater has such potential as a solution to water scarcity. The problem is, current desalination processes are energy intensive and expensive, accounting for up to 70% of desalination costs. That's where you come in. GE Ecomagination and Saudi Aramco have launched the Open Innovation Challenge in a search for renewable energy solutions in seawater desalination. They can be big ideas, small ideas, weird ideas, new ways to use old ideas, any insights that can help lower the cost of how water is desalinated using renewable energy. Up to 4 entries will receive $50,000 each to develop their ideas, and the best submissions will be considered for commercial opportunities. So if you're an aspiring scientist, engineer, entrepreneur, or any other sort of innovator, we're looking for new ideas to find more sustainable, energy-efficient solutions.
We're going out, searching far and wide across the globe for the best ideas across entrepreneurs, academia, students, researchers to really solve for a need that is very much of prime importance in the region, but hopefully will also benefit other parts of the world.
This kind of challenge will not only impact Saudi Arabia, but the whole world, because there are many deserts around the world, and if we could turn those deserts into garden, maybe it's a crazy ambition, but it's possible eventually. And then we don't have to depend on rain or groundwater, and we'll be able to pretty much grow food anywhere in the world. And that's our hope and dream.
Our research group at MIT has been looking at how entirely new materials could help us get more affordable clean water from the ocean. Water desalination today often uses filtration membranes that effectively reject salt ions like sodium and chloride, but at the cost of sluggish water output and a very high energy footprint. I'm working with Professor Jeffrey Grossman in the Materials Science Department at MIT on the design of new membranes for water desalination. One of the membranes that we're studying is made of graphene. Our simulations show that graphene could let water through at more than 100 times the permeability of existing membranes while still rejecting salt. So while there's still a lot of work to be done on this topic, we're very encouraged by our existing results.
Regardless of the technology, we still have to remember that we have to conserve better And that might be one of the most important things we do. Recognizing that there are unknowns and potentially negative impacts, we really need to think about every action we take. Because not thinking ahead is exactly what creates these kinds of situations.
I want to make sure that every Californian knows your country is going to be there for you when you need it this year. But we're going to have to all work together in the years to come to make sure that we address the challenge and leave this incredible land and bounty to our children and our grandchildren in at least as good shape as we found it.